The mystic man, the enigma of Peter, Tosh, Right about now, I'm glad to welcome each and everybody here who has made it here today on the Earth Strong of Peter, 68 Earth Strong, who have come out to celebrate and celebrate with his family on this blessed occasion, Peter Tosh Symposium. And I'm sure you can agree that just seeing that footage, that clip from the Super Jam concert 1983 at the National Arena, you feel that energy, that pulsating vibration that only Peter Tosh could deliver. And you get a sense of the power of the music and the message, you know. So the whole idea of having a celebration of Peter Tosh, as well as, you know, other artists, is to really celebrate the legacy and the talent that we have here, you know, and the talent that has gone before us. So I want to welcome each and everybody formally to the event. My name is Dr. Michael Barnett, and we have a nice, powerful array of speakers who will give different perspectives on Peter Tosh. Peter, reggae revolutionary, equal rights advocate is the title of the talk, but there are so many titles that we can bestow upon Peter. Such was his power and his presence. So, without too much ado and formality, you know, I would like to bring Herbie Miller, who is the curator of the Jamaican Music Museum at the Institute of Jamaica, also has the distinction of being a former manager of Peter Tosh. Really did a lot in shaping his career in his solo years, you know, right after the Wailers unfortunately went their separate ways in the early 70s. But, you know, Herbie can speak to that if needs be. Herbie has, because of his position now in the Jamaican music industry, it's actually double booked. So what we're going to do is, when he's done his presentation, we'll allow a few short questions, if anybody has it, to him, because he has to leave, unfortunately, for another event. But Herbie is going to give us a perspective on Peter, and he's going to elaborate. But the title of his talk is, "He That Does Truth Comes Into the Light." He that does truth comes into the light. So without any further ado, and without a big, long biography, I'm just going to ask Herbie Miller to come to the podium and give his presentation. Thanks. Yes.
Thanks, Michael. Good evening, all. The title sounds so good, but I can't claim it, you know. That's what's written on the order of merit. He that does truth comes into the light. What I can tell you, however, is that, like Michael said, it was unfortunate, the split with the Wailers. It's like saying it's unfortunate, the split with the Beatles, because out of the split we got the four of them, and out of the split with the Wailers we got three magnificent artists. What is unfortunate is that both Bob and Peter made their exit. And I think we see so many groups or individuals that have left groups to go on and make a huge mark on the cultural industry, in the music field in particular, and then they come back for a regrouping and kind of show the world what might have been or something of the sort. I could talk about so many different aspects of Peter, you know. This man was a comedian. He could have made a living just being a comedy act. He could also have made a living being, believe it or not, or perhaps not so difficult to believe, a medicine man. Because he was truly the bush doctor, and I don't just mean the herb specialist that he was, nor the herbs specialist, but a magician as well, who understood the power of that sort of thing. His record label, he named it Intel Diplo. And the rationale behind that is that he was an intelligent diplomat. So, though most of us have this image of Peter being dread, I have seen this man hold court in some swank metropolitan environments that you would believe that he was a man from the UN or the IMF or some such place using diplomacy. And the people, I want to talk some more though about why I believe Peter Tosh sincerely deserved this award, and touch a little bit as to whether or not he would have wanted to accept the award. Because he and I have seen so many awards all over the world, and every little guy with a fry fish shop or a record store set up an award. Chicago has about 3. Philly, New York, wherever you go, some little thing is set up and you're awarded something. The truth is, most awards mean nothing but an ego trip. An ego trip to those making the award and those receiving the award. Others become almost meaningless because while they may be important, they are too often given to surrogates, friends, and company. Who is your friend? That's who get the award. Both national and other awards, such as the Musgraves, have been given to upstart, journeymen, and associates of those with the power to determine who are recognized and at their mission of proven and genuine accomplishment. And while Peter Tosh may have been a harsh critic of the unequal and unjust shitstem, as he called the system, a system designed and maintained by the plantation masters and later the colonial and even the post-colonial leaders, he was at the same time a staunch nationalist, that Peter Tosh. So I'm sure that during his lifetime, if Jamaica were ever threatened by any outside force, Peter would be among the first to be on the beach or wherever this threat might materialize. And whether with a piece of stick, stone, or whatever else, he would be there defending. Therefore, putting himself on the front line and at the same time is inspiring you and I to join in that defense of this little rock that he called Jamaica, that he believed was a little piece of Africa broken off and afloat, lodging somewhere in the chaos beyond. So that brings us to the OM, the Order of Merit. And though in all likelihood it would not have been of any significance to him, it is important to many others that the Jamaican government has finally recognized the vocalist, lyricist, composer, musician, social activist, Pan-Africanist, revolutionist, and humanist, Peter Tosh, with a posthumous award of the Order of Merit. Any national award is significant, important, and respectful. And I believe Peter would have been moved by the gesture, though reluctant to accept it because the struggle for a just and equitable Jamaica is still incomplete. While many among us recognize Tosh for his advocacy for freedom, it is for his seminal contribution to the evolution of Jamaican popular music that he is honored. They didn't say they honor him about the bad word, nor the weed, nor even the revolutionary stand that he embodied. It's really for the music. And Tosh was a fantastic musician. Forget great singer. Forget great singer. Just as a musician. Skill Cole once said to me, Herbie, the only thing I never see Peter play is trombone. You know that song with the harp in it, King of Kings, blah, blah, blah. Creation. Peter and I, Peter Simon is here. Peter Simon is a recognized international photographer who's shot everything from Martin Luther King to Woodstock to reggae and so on. And it is his sister Carly Simon's place up in Martha's Vineyard that Peter would open all of his North American tours. And we were out browsing one day and he bought an harp. The man never played a harp yet. And by the end of the tour, he turned up at my house one day and said, listen to this. And it was Creation. With all that harp like Dorothy Ashby or one of those great harps. So his ability to just take up something and make music out of it was fantastic. He was a session musician making money, gigging at Duke Reed, at Sir J.J., and especially at Gibbous Studio as a rhythm guitarist. I'll talk about that later on. So it is through his music and activism and philosophy, Peter Tosh's innovations went a far way to establish an artistic and philosophical root of contemporary Jamaican art and culture globally, a feat which until now was not sufficiently recognized in his homeland. As I said, there are all kind of little things happening over the place, people recognizing him. But there have been some big ones that he got as well. For many on whose behalf his actions and his music advocated, this recognition is bittersweet. It is bittersweet for two reasons. The first is that it comes from a system Tosh really was mad at. Because it still did not recognize some of what he was fighting for. Not him alone, but he was out there. So all the adjustment for the social inequities and all that, it's not yet complete. The other is that the same system, by finally recognizing Mr. Tosh with an OM, also acknowledges the importance of addressing and adjusting the maladies he highlighted through his music and advocacy on behalf of the proletariat. These maladies include lawlessness, violence, consistent government neglect of the masses, poor education, inadequate housing, lack of jobs, oppressive colonial laws which are still in our books, which he paid dearly for time and time again, like the little girl who recently paid with her life for cussing bad word. And at the same time, suppressing some of the philosophies that could allow us to overcome some of these crazy stuff that keep us down. So Tosh has privately and publicly argued that government from any side and from any dispensation, from whichever party, that they should address all of these problems, and especially on behalf of poor people and low-class Jamaicans. And for those of you who are really interested in Tosh talking about that, go find the Peace Concert CD. Listen to it. There's also a CD of just interviews. The guy was amazing. The brethren was amazing. Go check it out. I won't bother even play a clip or anything. Just a little of the background, his bio. It's Winston Hubert McIntosh. That's his real name. He was born in a little place called Church Lincoln in Westmoreland on this day in 1944. He attended church services as a child, and it is there that the whole spirituality was instilled in him. He also learned to play piano in that little church, and he learned to sing there, and he constantly talked about having to sing songs like, "Wash me, Jesus, wash me until I'm white like snow." He was mad about that kind of stuff. He also did not like the one about "Amazing Grace, oh great the sound to save a wretch like me." He didn't dig that one either. But he sang them, and you hear them in his music, and ironically, his music is now a part of the Anglican hymnal in the Caribbean, so you know. So on arrival in Kingston, he met Bonnie and Bob, and the group was founded. I'm sure all of you basically know the history. We won't get into too much of that. But as the band's consummate musician, in addition to his plaintive melodica playing, Tosh's contributions on keyboard and guitar introduced an idiosyncratic performance style. The color, the timbre, the texture he coaxed from his keyboard, and the choppy syncopated guitar riffs of conscious roots reggae also made Tosh a leading innovator of that style of music. His percussive approach to guitar playing was like nothing associated with the perfunctory, cliched style that had become the norm. Peter Tosh effortlessly produced complex variations and inventive rhythmic crisscrossing without losing the essential beat that defines reggae. Along with drummer Carlton Barrett's role, you know Bob Marley and the Wailers song from that initial Roll by Carly. So in addition to that, it is Tosh's guitar strums that indelibly identify the band's sound. Michael Veal, author of Dub Soundscapes and Shattered Sounds of Jamaican Reggae, believes, and I quote, that Peter Tosh's status as a reggae icon overshadows his talent as one of the music's most innovative rhythm guitarists, end of quote. On any number of Wailers songs and independent sessions, Veal points out, Tosh's innovative choked string muted quarter tone time with its distinctive individual and individuality provides the foundation of the groove. Musically, Tosh left an unfaltering legacy. He left a distinctive musicianship that others would mimic and evolve. His rapid staccato riffs, gradations, vamps, modulations of tonality, of meter, of temper, of timbre, and textural effects suggest more than one guitarist involved in the creation of his polyrhythms. Peter Tosh, the activist. Tosh also left a revolutionary legacy, one that still ignites controversy today. Among the Wailers, he most prominently and explicitly voiced a militant resistance against social inequity, bigotry, and unwarranted persecution in his advocacy. His songwriting and performances, such as on songs like Mark of the Beast, 400 Years, Babylon Queendom, Apartheid, and Get Up, Stand Up. The last, of course, which was co-written with Marley, has become an anthem for the civil rights group Amnesty International. It is among the touchstones and guideposts that defines the examples of the best of reggae tradition and protest, and a sense of protest and resistance. During the 1970s, a time of civil unrest and political violence in Jamaica, his message highlighted the period's confrontation with its post-colonial identity through songs such as I Am That I Am and African. In a country struggling with partisan violence and a vicious battle of political viewpoints, Tosh's music argued for an objective understanding of human freedom that transcended and defied ideologies. He founded the Youth Consciousness Concert in 1975, two concerts which enforced the potency of music for social and revolutionary change. First held at Jamaica House grounds and then at Helsha Beach, the concert series encouraged the rejection of blind tribalism and garrisons. In that context, songs like Can't Blame the Youth, Jamming in a Jam Down, and Equal Rights resounded with increased significance. Tosh believed in the power of music to liberate through, he himself declared, "The music that I sing is a music of awakening the slumbering mentality of those that sleep." A master at balancing rebellion and spirituality and navigating the fine line between the sacred and the secular, Peter Tosh also expanded his championship of human rights and his condemnation of racial injustice, colonialism, and imperialism through his work as a solo artist and an activist promoting civil rights and freedom movements around the globe. He abhorred the status quo's domination over the masses and was disgusted by police brutality. A student of the University of the West Indies, lecturer Dr. Walter Rodney, in his grounding sessions, Peter responded to the government's refusal to allow the Guyanese history lecturer re-entry into the island by joining the protest that had developed on October 16, 1968. As students and others were beaten and tear-gassed by the police, Peter reacted by commandeering a Jolly Joseph bus, rescued students, and transported protesters back to West Kingston. So he didn't just talk it, he acted it. At his most mature, Tosh's actions and his music refocused on universal inequity and the psychological warfare of political and religious doctrines that perpetuated unjust social systems. A number of songs like Mark of the Beast, No Mercy, and Vampire condemned such systems at home and abroad. He was a committed Garveyite. He also paid a lot of attention to Che Guevara and Malcolm X. Of course, Selassie never left his consciousness. By the late 1970s, Peter Tosh became an outspoken member of MUSE, Musicians United for Safe Energy, and performed on the groundbreaking No Nukes concert in 1979. Expanding his creative integrity to concerns for social and political environmental issues, Tosh recorded No Nuclear War as a protest against all states stocking up on poison gases and nuclear weapons. His ever-objective, non-partisan insight into issues also informed his protest against nuclear forces, inspiring a young and future American president, Barack Obama. In a 1983 article written while still a student at Columbia University, Obama highlighted his own views on the nuclear warfare using Tosh's subtle circumvention of deceptive politics. And he quotes, "When Peter Tosh sings that everybody is asking for peace, but nobody is asking for justice, one is forced to wonder whether disarmament or arms control issues, severed from economic and political issues, might be another instance of focusing on the symptoms of a problem instead of the disease itself." End of quote. So too, as Danny Quill suggests in his critique of Tosh, when the Parliament of Jamaica sits down to consider whether or not to legalize ganja, they too will have Peter Tosh and his lyrics to turn to help make that decision. Peter Tosh was also the first international artist to promote the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, pioneering what would become an international protest movement. Tosh performed for free at anti-apartheid concerts around the world, featuring protest music that openly declared deep solidarity with the freedom fighters of the NC and SWAPO and so on and so forth. And so when you listen to an album like Equal Rights, you listen to songs like Get Up, Stand Up, Apartheid, African, 400 Years. Then he comes to Not Gonna Give It Up. All of this in support of those who were subjected to that apartheid system. And many in that struggle have acknowledged his influence and how he gave them strength in that struggle. Likewise, the late South African reggae artist Lucky Dube credited Peter Tosh as his primary inspiration during his childhood under apartheid. Lucky says, reggae is not just one message. It is a lot of messages to different people in different situations. Reggae is relevant to their situation. For me in South Africa, during apartheid, it was Peter Tosh. Peter said, Africa is the richest place, but the poorest race. So even Lucky, it's undeniable when you listen to the way he performs, his voice, his diction, his style, his timing, and so on. But these protest efforts often came at the risk of Tosh's own life. Peter Tosh was arrested and beaten by the authorities on numerous occasions. In 1976, he was arrested outside the British High Commission in Kingston for protesting against Ian Smith's takeover of Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. He was beaten by the police at his home and arrested in 1972 for possessing herb. That beating resulted in 7 stitches in his forehead and a fractured rib. His now famous reflections on justice and peace would be summarized in the protest chant, "No justice, no peace," during the 1983 Rodney King protests in Los Angeles, USA. He all but upstaged Marley in the infamous peace concert in '78, when in front of a sold-out audience and with the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition present, he delivered a straight and hard-hitting lecture about Jamaica's and the world's politics toward the poor and people of color. It was contextualized within a system of colonial education and brainwashing, where the police protected the interests of the few and brutalized the masses. A few days after that concert, and on the eve of a European tour, Tosh was attacked by 7 policemen outside Halfway Tree, dragged to the police station, beaten. And when he realized what they were trying to do, he turned over his eye and faked death. And one was heard to say, "The boy dead now." In that, he suffered a head injury which required 32 stitches, a punctured spleen, he was passing blood, a fractured rib, and the hand that he was trying to protect his head with was also severely broken. As I have elsewhere suggested, perhaps Peter Tosh's greatest contribution to humanity is through music. And through music, populations have come to communicate to the inhabitants of the world, especially those who have also experienced centuries of injustice. That the importance of music as an art form of self-expression gains access beyond one's own borders and as a vehicle for expansion is what it really meant to Peter. And it is this renegade status that arguably has weakened his influence among us Jamaicans, despite the open embrace of his ideology abroad. As Jamaicans, to witness Peter Tosh is tantamount to confronting our own fear and our failures. And yet we cannot be the nation we deserve without this encounter with ourselves. With the Jamaica, Peter Tosh fought for us to overcome and embrace its possibilities. And as I said earlier on, he would also always remark, Jamaica, it is Jah blessed little island, a piece of Africa afloat in the Caribbean. It is not only surprising, but also disappointing that Peter Tosh, whose contribution to our national culture and whose success in popular music throughout the world is beyond question, has only now been recognized nationally for his many sacrifices, selfless generosity, monumental artistic contributions, and achievements. This, his own country, Jamaica, has until now overlooked. They have overlooked this advocate of social and political justice when recognitions for acts of cultural accomplishments and humanitarianism is being considered and rewarded. The weight, magnitude, and importance of Peter Tosh in these areas of our national life is paralleled only by a few, and even less a few musicians. For those who suggest that Tosh is an unworthy recipient of the OM because of his antisocial behavior, for the menace of a raving beast, as one writer said, they envision him in like an animal. You know, when I read that thing of quails, I couldn't believe that this guy couldn't understand what Tosh was saying. And it made me think again about the young lady out in St. Thomas that perhaps he didn't understand that either. I therefore firmly believe, without reservation, and I agree that Winston Hubert McIntosh, a Jamaican citizen, who because of his musical, cultural, and social political contribution to our nation and the world, and for the stellar recognition he has brought Jamaica and Jamaicans, as well as the stature he continues to hold internationally, some 25 years after his death, should receive posthumously the highest award our nation can bestow on a civilian. Whether or not Peter would have accepted it is another matter. I cannot answer that question, but I can tell you one thing. It is my belief that, like some of the other awards, that he would push me up front and say, you go take it, Virgin, that's what I pay you for. That he understood that these awards that we are given and these medals that we win mean a lot to the little men out there, the little women out there, to the Jamaicans out there struggling for survival. That when Usain Bolt and Safa and the young ladies run and they all win, Jamaica wins. And it tells every little boy and girl, every little underprivileged, every poor people, that you know what? We can do it too. And so with that in mind, I think he would have said, Herbie, you go take it. On behalf of all of those little people who it would inspire. Again, that's how I feel. We can't speak for the man. He's in another place now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's give Herbie another round of applause. Yeah, man. And as I said before, because Herbie is double booked, you know, of his stature in the Jamaican music fraternity, we're going to take a few questions for Herbie now because he has to leave very soon. So we can entertain us a couple of questions. Anybody has a burning question they would like to ask, right? If you could come down to the front because we have technical issue with the other microphones. I don't know what it is, but who? So you can talk loud. I'm going to bring up the mic just in case, though.
Herbie, excellent as usual. Thank you very much. But can you say anything about the management of Peter's legacy, his catalog, and the influence he has had in the music world? How is that being managed, and how is it moving forward?
All right. I'm going to take 2 more questions, so just make a note of that one, Herbie.
Yes, thank you very much. A very good presentation. Now, you mentioned the play on word that Peter Tosh was famous for. He talked about kill some shitty and how can one man gang ja and so on. What do you think, how do you think he would describe this OM, I think? What would he call it?
Thanks for your presentation as well. My question is, what are we doing to protect his sound recording and the other musicians whose work is due to enter the public domain by the 31st of December this year?
Yes, Herbie, another good presentation. I've been to a presentation here before, and you did well. Just as there are various theory, Herbie. Has it been uncovered why Peter was murdered? They said that he was traveling a gun at some point, and a man that was traveling with him has taken up the ownership. And I heard that this is a false, statement. So has it been uncovered why he was murdered?
All right. What I'll do is let Herbie answer those questions, and then we'll just have another round. Yeah. 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 Huh? Yeah, I know it might tie in, but it's the order. It's the order. I didn't see the order. Huh? Yeah. Anyway, is that mic on? All right. Yeah. Go ahead. All right. Yeah. All right. Deal with that.
Yes. The question about the legacy, the catalog, and so on. And a lot of people tend to weigh that against the idea that Marley catalog is always available, always selling. The marketers always finding something fresh to do with it. Marley was on Island Records. The owner of Island Records was personally involved. It's a small independent label. It's easier to manage. Peter was on Virgin, Island, Columbia, Rolling Stone, EMI, and Capitol. It's all over. if EMI decides they want to put out a definitive Peter Tosh, let's say something that would be like Legend, for example, the rest of the company is going to say, look, you can only get this song, you can't get that song. So it's very difficult to market him at this point to its fullest. It's been attempted, Sony just repackaged both Equal Rights and legalize it in deluxe edition. The entire Equal Rights sessions have now been put together as one document. So you can hear how Peter was thinking in that period. And some outtakes make up a second. It seemed like legalize it. And the annotations have been expanded. I had the opportunity to write the one for Equal Rights. Peter's family also just put together a management company for his estate. And that will help a lot in pulling stuff together and seeing all of what is due Peter and his family coming to them. So that's in a work in progress right now. The wordplay, yes, Peter boy, this man had a way with words, you know. Manager became damager, BMW became black man wagon, producer became reducer. You know, he had names for all of us and so on. From where he is right now and how he got there, I believe he would call the OM an original martyr. Music going into the public domain is something for another forum, except to say Peter's earliest work as Ismailis or the Whalers, it's a few years before that we'll get there. His most recent work, it has some time, and I know there are talks to extend that period to some 75 years. The last question, why? Was it why or how or the reason? We have heard many rumors. I stand there and I can tell you about the man I knew. I can tell you there are times when bad man from all about come. They come for this and they come for that. And they come to all of us, all of the recording artists, all of the top name groups. None of us escape them coming to us with suggestions and requests and so on. But let me tell you something about Peter Tosh. Once he was approached through me to get some fatigues for some brethren in the hills. Nothing heavier than just fatigues. And you know what he said to them? He said, I'll tell you what I'll get for you guys. When we come back from the next tour, we're going to have some football and some cricket bat, some cricket pad. And he brought back sufficient cricket balls and bats and pads and stuff to start a youth club. A very close associate of ours got arrested once for a firearm. And Peter never visited him in the lockup. However, he supported him with, helping to deal with the lawyers' fees and so on. As much as he talked about equal rights and justice, and like Malcolm X, by any means necessary, violence was never the first avenue that he wished to take. However, I've often heard him quote Malcolm's message to the grassroots. Harm no man, but let no man harm you. Any man who tries to harm you, clap him first. So I've heard these rumors about him protecting, or some guy taking a rap for him and all that. Personally, I don't believe it. I do not believe it. And Mark, I was not working with Peter when that incident took place. I cannot say what happened. We're all guessing, as you are who asked the question. But I can tell you, if Peter turned to that sort of situation, protecting criminals and so on, then it was after the time that I was associated with them, and that was not the type of person that I knew. So I don't believe that story, brethren.
All right, here's what's going to happen. This is not the formal question and answer session. We're only having these questions because Herbie is about to leave. So what I can do is entertain one more question if it pertains to the issue of the OM, and only on that topic, because we're getting a multitude of topics. We have 4 more panelists to present, and then there will be a full question and answer session there. So if somebody has a burning question that relates directly to the issue of the OM, you can take that question. Okay, the brother in the blue.
Thank you so much. Herbie, I am a childhood friend of Peter Tosh. I'm a childhood friend of Peter Tosh. And I came from Florida just for this. And I came to talk to you, to hear you. But I didn't hear you say anything about why is it now and who gave him the OM. And you need to address, and everybody else in this room need to address, why it took so long when Michael, Uncle Eddie, PJ never gave him the award. And maybe because of that event when he hosted Bob Marley at the concert. And they were mad at him for life for that.
All right, interesting. Herbie?
The question is, why didn't he get it from the other governments of the past? Well, he has gotten it now. You know, everything don't come overnight, brethren. And it's a good time to have gotten it. Jamaica 50, 25 years after his death. It has been suggested and considered before. I don't know who in the government made the decision that now is the time. I don't think I even know who wrote the recommendation. So the family feels good about it, and as a childhood friend, I think you feel good about it too. So let's leave it at that, and hope that Peter's legacy will take root and that it will be inspiring to many youngsters. As he said, you can't blame the youth, you can't fool the youth. You teach the youth about all these pirates, and he named them. And then he said, so the youth, I'm a bust up gun like the pirate now. But we taught the youth about the pirate. So let us look at that part of Peter, and that today he's been rewarded for music, but we know beyond music, he was a very powerful brethren. Give thanks.
All right, yes. Thank you, Herbie. Right now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce one of our renowned lecturers and researchers here at the University of the West Indies. She has the distinction of founding the Reggae Studies Unit here at the university, and also is the former director of the Reggae Studies Unit, as well as the Institute of Caribbean Studies. I am talking about none other than Professor Caroline Cooper. Let's give her a round of applause. Yes.
Thanks very much, Michael. What I want to talk about is just one song by Peter, African, and I want to look at Pan-Africanist ideology in that song. And it seems to me that African is the finest articulation in Jamaican popular music of Pan-Africanist ideals. I can't think of another song that lays it out so clearly. Don't care where you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're an African. Now, I generously forgive Tosh for that conventional use of man to include woman. It would be far more sensible in popular usage to allow woman to signify androgyny. After all, man is wombed in woman. But let us leave aside this feminist red herring. What is much more pertinent is the way in which, in this opening stanza, Tosh uses African as a marker of racial identity, thus subverting conventional representations of racial and national politics in Jamaica. Now, my colleagues know me as a queen of recycling, so if you read my column on Sunday, you will recognize a lot of what I'm going to say now. No good piece of work can be used only once. You know, waste of time, business, that. But it's not the whole thing you're going to get back, because I know a lot of you read it. No, it is, but I think this is a very important point that we have to keep making, that it is only people of African descent in Jamaica who do not define their racial identity in terms that denote ancestral homelands. Europeans, Chinese, Syrians, and Indians are all raced and placed in their very naming. It is only Africans who are so black. Africa has been so dehumanized in the colonial imaginary that relatively few Jamaicans, even today, want to identify themselves as African. And many obviously, quote unquote, pure black Jamaicans routinely claim ancestors of other races, usually distant great-great-great-grandfathers who have left no visible traces of themselves on the body of their supposed relatives. And even in cases where some racial mixing is evident, the African element in the mix is always a half that has never been told. Mixed-race Jamaicans are half Indian, half Chinese, half Syrian, half white, but never half African. Now, I would concede that this unnaming of the black half may signify that African is grudgingly recognized to be the unacknowledged norm, sort of default position. But much more likely, this silence may speak eloquently of the unresolved question of race and the contested status of African people in Jamaican society. So, for Tosh, well, before I go back to Tosh, consider, for example, the Jamaican names for two mixed-race categories, Chinese Royal and Coolie Royal. Now, the Dictionary of Jamaican English defines Chinese Royal as, quote, the offspring of a Chinese and usually a Negro, or sometimes a white or East Indian, unquote. Similarly, the category Coolie Royal is defined as, quote, a person of mixed East Indian and Negro stock, unquote. Now, the unnamed African appears to be the royal in both hybrids. But this is no necessary cause for celebration. A more cynical reading suggests that it is only in mixing up that the royalty of African stock can be recognized, or worse, royal neutrally signifies mix-up and blender, and is thus a valorization of the mixed-race ideal of Caribbean acculturation in which pure African stock is devalued. And indeed, the African majority in Jamaica has been subjected to a fictive definition of national identity that is essentially multiracial. And I've gotten a lot of abuse over the last couple of weeks in my columns, so daring to contest the motto. Now, this national myth of the multiracial Jamaica is inscribed in the motto, out of many, one people. The homogenizing impulse effectively delegitimizes the common sense claim that on the face of it, Jamaica very much looks like an African society. This room may be somewhat atypical. The mixed race motto does speak to the economic imbalance in the society, which concentrates wealth in the hands of a few who are mostly the out of many one type, that is not African. And I will never forget the way in which the contradictions encoded in the motto were interrogated by one of my high school English teachers, Julie Thorne, who's an English woman who had come to teach as part of a development program. And one day in one of our classes, she asked, out of many one people, which one? Now, Tosh's assertion of an African identity for black Jamaicans immediately contests the divisive, racist devaluation of continental Africa in Jamaica. I think part of the problem has to do with our history, that the kind of history that is taught, that the presence of Africans in the Americas started with slavery. We don't routinely teach the pre-Columbian African presence. So anyhow, having established African as a racial category, Tosh proceeds to affirm a quintessential African racial identity that is not exclusively bound to the particular geographical location of national origin. Now, mind your nationality. You have got the identity of an African. So that global African identity manifests itself in a variety of local settings. Somewhat paradoxically, Tosh asserts both the coterminality of race and place and contests that very identification. All black people come from Africa originally, and to be more precise, all humans come from Africa, because we know that human life started on the continent. So no matter where you come from, as long as you're a human, you're African. But anyhow, in Tosh's terms, so to be black is to be African. But to be African is not necessarily a function of having been physically born on the continent. Africa is a continent of consciousness from which some quote-unquote Europeans born on the continent voluntarily exile themselves. Conversely, there's a sense of home that compels Africans born outside the continent to valorize repatriation of the mind, especially when the body does not have the economic resources to follow the spirit, as happens in the case of Rastafari a lot. At one of Sizzla's free concerts at Augustown Open Land a few years ago, one of the performers on the bill, Sandokan I think it was, used a brilliant metaphor to describe the sense of primal connection that scattered Africans feel for the continent. He said, Africa is an emotional magnet. So Tosh invokes the magnetic concept of the African diaspora, or scattered Africa, as a Trinidadian Garvey scholar, Tony Martin, would prefer, because Tony says black people are always defining their experience in terms of other people's experiences. So we're not Jews, so we should talk about the diaspora. Splitting hairs, but I think I know what he means. The metaphor of scattered Africa appeals to me, for it not only denotes disruption and dislocation, but also connotes regeneration. The word scattering encodes an agricultural image of germination. Seeds sown to the wind, which will eventually bear fruit. The scattering of African peoples across the globe engenders cultural cross-fertilization, so that hybrid strains and hardy new varieties of Africanness emerge out of the sowing. Now, Tosh establishes ever-widening concentric circles of racial stroke cultural affiliation. Beginning at the center, Jamaica, he sings, because if you come from Clarendon, Portland, Westmoreland, you're an African. Obviously, I think he chooses Clarendon, Westmoreland, and Portland because they represent different points on the compass. Portland East, Westmoreland West, and Clarendon somewhat central. And the waves of racial, cultural, transnational affiliation expand to the wider Caribbean, Trinidad, Nassau, Cuba. By the final refrain of African, Tosh, following the roots of Caribbean migration to North America, Britain, and beyond, invokes many of the cities, countries of the world in which scattered Africans have re-established home. Brixton, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Miami, Canada, Switzerland, Germany, Taiwan. And we know that our higglers these days are going to Taiwan because, as one of them said to a travel agent, we see these things that we're selling coming from Taiwan. Where is Taiwan? We want to go and buy direct, okay? So, moving from the politics of location, Tosh addresses phenotypic differences between Africans across the globe. Now, mind your complexion, there is no rejection. You're an African, because if your complexion high, if your complexion low, if your complexion in between, you're an African. Now, the complexion rejection rhyme, I think, very cleverly contrasts the exclusionary racial politics of white racists. You know, if you have a little drop of black blood, you're black, no matter how white you look. And he's contrasting that with the inclusionary discourse of many Africanists. In addition, though Tosh seems to establish a hierarchy of high, low, and in-between complexions, it is a very notion of hierarchy that is being contested. Whatever the physical manifestation of Africanness in terms of skin color, there is a rooted cultural identity that transcends the physical. There is no rejection of mixed race people from the category African, whosoever will may come. Furthermore, Tosh, in affirming the equal value of high, low, and in-between complexions, contests the neo-colonial racial politics in Jamaica that conventionally defines melanin-rich skin as low color and melanin-deficient skin as high color. Religion is as effective an instrument of alienation as is color and also class. So Tosh asserts, no mind denomination, that is only segregation, you're an African. Because if you go to the Catholic, if you go to the Methodist, if you go to the Church of God, you're an African. Now it seems to me that the primary point of Tosh's allusion to these Christian denominations is not to valorize them, but rather to affirm the African identity of their devotees. Indeed, at the famous integration concert to which Herbie referred, Tosh gave a decidedly condemnatory reading of the sweet by-and-by message of many Christian churches. Look how bloodbath long we they are wait upon Jesus. No to bloodbath. All the war in the earth, Jesus can't do a thing about it, a grass cat. You know, seeing? Who have to go do that? Is I and I have to come together with love, seeing? Heartical love and respect for each other. You know, seeing? Because I'm like every day done with. You know, seeing? Yes, I owe. Now, bloodbath, grass cat, bongo clippings, and my favorite, Rasta Castle, are some of the other power words, in addition to African, that Tosh used. And I just want to end by quoting a statement that he made in an interview that I did with him a little bit after that Super Jam concert. And quite a few people called me asking for copies of the interviews. I have a few copies here for only $50 each. University can't afford to give away photocopying. So if you want a copy, you can see me afterwards. Things very hard with us. So in that 1983 Super Jam concert, Tosh did not choose to use any of those infamous spiritual words. I got into a whole bit of research on African female fertility rituals in dancehall because of one thing that Tosh said in that interview to me, which has stayed with me, that the reason why words like BC are so powerful is because of their spirituality. And you really wouldn't associate spirituality with quote-unquote bad words, but if you want to follow that up, you can read my chapter on female fertility rituals in Sound Clash. But his response to my question about why he chose not to use any power words, as he called them, any spiritual words at that concert, is a lucid testimony to the wisdom of the man who did overstand how and when to use his arsenal of power words. He says there are many elements that have the same power. So you see some guys go to war with different size guns and get different effects from the different size guns seen. But when I come to war, I don't have to carry one special gun. I want to show them so I can shoot them many ways and them dead same way. You know, seeing? Yeah, man. So when they look for me to use my 45, me use my 77. So in conclusion then, from the security of his Rasta castle, that innermost chamber of consciousness and conscience, Peter Tosh launched a full-scale war against the forces of injustice. Generations of voices will chant his praises. Generations of voices will ride their own rhythms of resistance. Thank you.
Yes, Prof. Carolyn Cooper, as eloquent as ever. Let's give her another round of applause. All right. So running very quickly along now, I would like, it gives me great pleasure to introduce now a colleague of mine who has the distinction of being the co-founder of this very symposium, which was started in 2001. So there has been a few years it hasn't gone on, but it's been going for more than a decade anyway. This person is multi-talented. He's a painter. He is an artist in his own right. He's a lecturer. So many things to say, but without any big, procedure, I want to introduce Dr. Clinton Houghton of the Department of Government. Dr. Clinton Houghton.
Hi, good night. Good. The name of my presentation is Peter Tosh, Agency of an Alternative Post-colonial Narrative and Way of Life. And interestingly, I'm following from Caroline because my presentation is in a similar mode. The national motto of Jamaica is out of many one people. Peter Tosh disputes the appropriateness of this motto in the following statement. It's words, sound, and power that break down the barriers of oppression and drive away transgression and rule equality. Well, right now, you have a system or a system we're going in this country for long ages and times. 400 years and the same bucky master business and black inferiority and brown superiority and white superiority rule this little black country for a long time. Well, I come with earthquake, lightning, and thunder to break down these barriers of oppression, drive away transgression, and rule equality between humble black people. Tosh describes this system of out of many one people as one of structural barriers of oppression and transgression. The same bucky master business of black inferiority and brown and white superiority, which was established for over 400 years. In other words, the post-colonial Jamaican state became a neo-colonial state. Tosh's song that he did with the Whalers 400 years is a narrative critical of this neo-colonial or post-colonial state that emerged in Jamaica in 1962. So too, you can't blame the youth. A most profound criticism of the philosophy of the post-colonial education system for perpetuating a way of knowing and constructing meaning and an identity, epistemology and ontology, of colonialism for perpetuating black inferiority and brown and white superiority. What Marley calls brainwash education that make us your fool. Both the motto and Peter Tosh's statement represent two different kinds of post-colonial narrative. One official and the other unofficial. For the most ardent supporters of the motto, out of many one people, Jamaicans who criticize it as inappropriate regard Jamaicans of minority ethnic groups and fair-skinned as not citizens. In fact, certainly that is one of the criticisms that was labeled at Caroline. Moreover, in this post-colonial model of governance, the race and color problematic no longer exists, as far as they are concerned. It ended with independence. Hence, those like Tosh who are raising it as an issue are not acting in concert with the requirements of existing historical realities, but are bent on living in the past and opening up old wounds. There is thus a need for the insistation of the Tosh model of history, inspired by the tradition of black resistance, which is really, they're saying, there's a need to repudiate, to silence, to obscure the meaning of history, seemingly at odds with social harmony and national stability. Right? So the out of many one people concept was raised to silence, to obscure that tradition of black resistance from the earliest days of enslavement in Jamaica. And the first thing that they did in independence was to actually abolish Emancipation Day celebration. Because to celebrate Emancipation Day is to be against those who were never enslaved, or those descended from those who were never enslaved. That is why it was abolished. And that is why they tried to silence Amy Jakes Garvey. Bustamante, his words to her were in fact, he called her racist, right, for raising these things. These things that have been raised in Peter Tosh's songs and in the one that Carolyn spoke about earlier. For those who favor the post-colonial model advocated by Tosh, it has nothing to do with making some Jamaicans as non-citizens. Nothing at all. There's nothing anywhere, no evidence whatsoever that Tosh's view is to make some Jamaicans non-citizens. It was never the case. In fact, it was never the case in the history of struggles of Jamaicans from the earliest time. There's nothing to be found in that way. The essential argument of the Tosh model is one of justice, sovereignty, and recognition, which continue of black people, which continue to bend in one direction, in the direction of the minority. And that is the reason why it is affirmed, not just in Tosh, but in Rastafari generally, in Walter Rodney. Herbie Miller spoke about Tosh commandeering a bus when Rodney was made persona non grata. Is part of that. If you listen to some of Prince Buster's early songs, for example, you get the same thing. Prince Buster's song, for example, about peoples whose locks were cut. And then he said in the same song, but I don't hear them trimming the Chinese and the white. That's what he said in the song in the 1960s. Right? So the issue is always raised as one of justice. That the system after independence was still not fair to the majority of people in the country. 400 years, and it is the same philosophy that Tosh noted. The same philosophy as what happened in Bakawal. The same philosophy as what happened at Carroll Gardens. The same philosophy as what happened in 1966 in Shantytown. The same philosophy that led to the construction of garrisons in Jamaica. The same philosophy of police brutality. Listen to the songs, not just from Tosh, but many of the other singers. Late 60s especially into the 1970s. And these are the things that they raised. Not that some people are not Jamaicans and others are Jamaicans. What they were raising were issues having to do with the treatment of one set of people who are in the majority. That is what he was addressing. And in that sense, Tosh was on the same plane with Walter Rodney, who was expelled from the country. He was in the same plane with those whose books were seized from them, like George Beckford, and whose passport was taken away, amongst others. So that philosophy of 400 years that Tosh argues to be still part of the post-colonial narrative, a colonial narrative which became part and parcel of the post-colonial narrative. In songs like The Poor Man I Feel It, you know that song, Only the Poor Man I Feel It, right? Which is another of Tosh song. And we know many other songs. Poor Me Israelites by Desmond Decker and the Aces. Speaks to poverty, speaks to police brutality, speaks to the philosophy of the education system, which continue the colonial education and therefore instilling in young people the same colonial mentality. Apparently, to shut them up. Right? And of course, in the issue of who is beautiful, big issue in Jamaica, who is beautiful? That was part of that construction. And of course, who is God? These are some of the issues that Tosh raised and that he was beaten for. But more than that, I think he was beaten because, and even the way he's seen by some Jamaicans today, not necessarily because of some of these, but yes, but more so because of his aura. Peter Tosh is someone who would be called an uppity nigger. That's why they don't like him. It's precisely why they don't like him, because of his aura. He was not submissive to that power in society which he was critiquing. This Brown complex, modified under the banner of Out of Many One People in the Jamaican case, clearly won out in the nationalist movement, which assumed the power in the 1960s. It marginalizes the tradition of Emancipation Day rituals and the legacies of black anti-slavery struggles and anti-colonial struggles. It engages in the symbolic manipulation of Garvey and Garveyism and in the black aesthetic, spiritual and folk and popular cultural traditions. What Louis Lindsay calls symbolic manipulation. Right? Using these things, but you really don't mean them. You use them because if you associate yourselves with them, it's likely that you will get more votes. So if you hug up Garvey, never mind that you don't teach him in school. If you hug him up, then that's a form of symbolic manipulation, according to Louis Lindsay. Right? So that what they actually did was to co-opt, to pacify, to obscure the socio-political, economic, cultural, and identity interest of the black majority, and ultimately of all Jamaicans. Right? We'll see that you keep down one group, you ultimately keep down all groups. Because what you do is not to allow for the full development of the potential of people. Right? Now, this mode of, or this philosophy of out of many one people declares the articulation of blackness, declare the articulation of blackness to be racist. I mean, whenever it is raised, it is often declared as racist. Never mind that when you see the headlines in the newspaper about bleaching, never mind that. You don't see any editorials about these things. Right? Because it's okay. It's okay if people internalized the philosophy of those who enslaved them and colonized them to make it the philosophy of the way they relate to themselves and to each other. It's okay. Huh? Now, so apart from Tosh's clear vision of a post-colonial Jamaica, outside of the out of many one people declaration, is the fact that Tosh, more than the lyrics in his songs, which were indeed quite powerful, he also was quite active himself politically, as stated in 1968 when the Ian Smith regime unilaterally declared independence, and the British allowed them to do it because of who they were. Peter Tosh demonstrated against it, and he was arrested for it. In Anguilla, I remember the people also, a black little nation, declared independence the same time. And the British sent troops and suppressed them in the Caribbean. Right? Now, Tosh was an activist in the sense of that demonstration in which he was arrested. He also participated, as Herbie said, in the Rodney riots in downtown Kingston, driving buses. Tosh was also strident in his anti-apartheid views and was a real advocate against the apartheid system in South Africa and in what was then called Northern Rhodesia and Southwest Africa and so on. He supported the MPLA in Angola and the Cuban troops in Angola to block the South Africans from taking over Angola. Tosh supported the Sandinista revolution. In fact, I had a concert for them. I remember meeting in Cuba a group of South African freedom fighters, members of the Patriotic Front, and members of Nkumtu Sizwe, the military arm of the ANC. And in fact, they told me that they go into war singing the songs of Peter Tosh. They told me that. 1978. Peter Tosh also supported the Palestinian struggle and in fact refused to perform in Israel as a result of what was happening to the Palestinians. And Tosh, in going to Grenada to commemorate the first anniversary of independence, well, not independence, when Maurice, after revolution in Grenada, he actually went there and performed there. And when Maurice Bishop referred to him as comrade, Peter Tosh said, "No, I come black." Yeah. By the way, Tosh was also at the first Congress of the Workers' Party of Jamaica at Regal Cinema. And in fact, in the second Congress, in the private session, the theme song of that was Tosh's song, "Poor Man, I Feel It." Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hutton. Great. spirited presentations and very disciplined in terms of time. Now, at this point in time, I want to formally recognize the Tosh family who are here with us, and many of whom actually flew into Jamaica for the Peter Tosh celebrations, which have taken place all through the week. So I would like the Tosh family to stand up and be recognized. Please, thank you. So, yeah, man, everybody was here. Steve. Yeah, man, 2 generations on, you know, the Tosh legacy lives on. So, and speaking about the Tosh family, you know, it gives me great pleasure to introduce 2 of Peter's children who are the executors for the estate, the Peter Tosh estate, and they'll probably say something about the plans that they have for the estate as well as other matters concerning Peter's legacy. So without too much formal ado, I'd like to have Dave Tosh and Nyambe Tosh come to the podium. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. It's nice to see such a wonderful turnout tonight. I think the question that we get asked the most is, like, why has it taken so long? Why is it now that, you know, we're just starting to see things happening with the legacy? And, you know, where is the merchandise? And how come I can't get any CDs or things of that nature? And I think the story of just the family is an important one so that people can really understand why it's now that the things are just happening. When my father passed in 1987, I was 5 years old, going on 6. And then Davey was about 21. About, you know, we were still very young. And I didn't even know that an estate, you know, at 5 years old, you don't know anything about an estate. My mother didn't know anything about an estate, and I think our parents really didn't know that, you know, what was supposed to happen at that time. It wasn't until 1999, when I turned 18, that individuals reached out to the family, because, you know, that at that time is when we can legally, I could, you know, the youngest, I'm also the youngest, can legally be a part of any conversation when it comes to my father's estate. So a lot of individuals had seized the opportunity from 1987 to 1999, which is a very long time, to make personal profits that didn't benefit any of us. So in 1999, we finally reunited. My father has 10 children. I'm the youngest. Dave is one of the second oldest. And it was then that we started to have the conversation about what we can do as a family. One of our brothers at that time, I think it was in 1999, one of our brothers were in Belgium, and we actually didn't even know where he was. We just knew we had a, you know, Belgian brother. And so, even that issue in itself, kind of, we were told that, well, you know, there's one of you missing, so you can't really do anything. What if he comes out and he wants his money back? What, you know, what if this and what if that? So we kind of felt like, wow, you know, we're powerless. We still need this, you know, this attorney at the time to do whatever it is that he was doing, which really wasn't much. It really kept us, I would say, kind of oppressed at the time, because we turned to him for guidance, and we were misguided. So it wasn't until, I think, 2003, I actually had a sound. The brother that's 1 year older than me, I live in Boston. And we had a sound system that I actually started in 1999 called Step and Raise a Sound. and I would, send out emails of the sound bio, Peter's youngest children has a sound, and send it across the world. I would like Google up like reggae Africa and reggae Europe. And one of the websites I sent an email to said, I know your brother, he's in Belgium. And I was like, what? So mind you, all of this time has passed, and this is just 2003 where we found, and it had made some of the media here in Jamaica. We had finally found the missing link, so to speak. And that really had us feeling like, wow, we can now do something as a family because now we have that missing link to do something. But we were still we were still being misguided by some people. We didn't have the right team together. And so once I reached out and I contacted our attorney at the time and was like, we found our brother. We can finally do something. We can finally, make moves and promote our father's legacy. And I think we told him in maybe 2003, and it took 2 years for just that brother to get what was rightfully his, to get, go through the whole process of being recognized by the estate. By the shitstem, as what Dave just said. So as you realize, more time has passed. And even still, we were still very young. So it was actually, at the time, my mother had started working for, her name is Melody, some of you may know her. She was working for a woman who was crazy. But the woman's attorney, she was actually a millionaire. The woman's attorney just happened to be a Peter Tosh fan, and a serious Peter Tosh fan. And so I don't know how it worked out, but somehow this woman's attorney ended up being our attorney at the time, our present attorney, whose name's David Warnoff. And he was a fan, like a bona fide fan first. Not like the other attorney who only seek to line his pockets. So this attorney, David Warnoff, told us, he basically educated us on all of the things that we should do. He was like, why is there an estate being run by a public administrator? You guys should be the administrators of the estate. And I was like, really? Wow. And he's like, we need to close the estate in New York because my father was an international artist, so there was an estate there was a state in existence in New York, but also an estate in Jamaica. And we need to close all of these. Okay, we need, the attorney stated that we need to close all of these estates, and it needs to be run and streamed by the family. And it wasn't until then, so that's 2005 or so, that we realized that we had that. Maybe 2012 now, so 2009 or so, 2010, that we officially closed the estate, and I was made administrator of the estate. And once that was done, there was a lot of cleaning up to do. The attorney that misguided us had done so much damage, it's unspeakable. It's disgraceful. It's sad. It's so, so sad. And so we then made the steps to clean up the estate, try to find things, looking deep into contracts from 1989, 1990, and how the percentages were divided and how the family would be given 25% of some particular deal when they were due 90%. And those type of percentages went over a course of many, many years with some of the top-selling albums. So you can imagine how much money has been robbed and taken from our family, which also is one of the reasons why we have been, monetary reasons has been the reason why we have been unable to do the things that we would like to do. So now we're at the time where we're just making small steps. And, this week has been the first week that the family has been behind everything that has happened. So I now just want to speak to all the things that the family is working on. We have our manager here. We have a team now. So we have a wonderful attorney based in Boston, and we have a second entertainment attorney based in California. And then we have our manager, Corey Lashiver, who pretty much is like, you know, manage the estate as you would manage an artist. And so now we're at the point where, you know, we're doing licensing deals. We're in control of everything that happens. And so we're working on a movie, a blockbuster hit movie. We also would like to put together an official documentary from the family that we approve. And those are some of the major conversations that are happening now. And we also are working on building our presence here in Jamaica, because that is most important. We're working on a museum, an official museum with artifacts. We plan to also develop the memorial garden in the official Peter Tosh Memorial Garden in Belmont. And just looking to work with a lot of individuals to make that happen. So we've come a very, very long way. And so I think it was the other day that someone had said, you know, do you think it's too late that your father has received the Order of Merit? And I said to them, you know what, it couldn't have happened before this time. So now was the time. So I think I'll leave it there, because I know that I want to make sure that people have enough time for questions. Dave, do you have anything you want to add to it? You'll just answer some questions? Yeah, so just so that you have an overstanding, as my father would say, as the journey of the family and where we've come from and where we are today. We've come a long way, and so I just look forward to answering some questions from you guys. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Niambe. All right, so here's the thing. Because we're just the one microphone, I see two hands raised. So I'm going to proceed in that sequence, but you'll have to see with me because we just have the one microphone, which is an impediment.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. First of all, I'm very happy to hear that the family is going to establish a full presence in Jamaica. I think that's very important for people who didn't know Peter Tosh physically. And secondly, when do you think you'll be able to reissue some of his best albums that I think are not available now? Because that is really important.
Well, we've actually had a couple of reissues happened. We had, I think Herbie Miller had spoke to the Legalize It and Equal Rights and Justice album were reissued by Sony. And then EMI did a 5-disc plus DVD compilation recently. And it was a digital release, is that correct? Or digital release in the US, and then it was officially released in Europe.
All right, thanks. I'm going to Jerry and then Ayola. All right.
Yeah, good night. I wasn't here for the panel discussion. Herbie is still here? Well, I still want to ask a beautiful young lady and the rest of the panelists. I would like a response from the young lady, the family, and from the panelists. Out of all of the people, not about the ordinary people, out of all of the so-called important people who've been pushing for Peter Tosh to be decorated, you can name those of them who is pushing for justice.
Um, for me, the individuals that I know are the individuals that are here tonight, some of the panelists. Herbie Miller is one that I met he knew me. He told me that my mother would be at his house and we would play with the children. But I recently met him again in 2003, and I realized that he was one of the, for me, he's been an individual that I could personally see doing the works for justice.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people just know my father as a gunjaman.
I don't think no member of the family have any real idea which individual or group of people who did that. Well,
all right, we have to go with the vibration. I want Sister Iola to get her question in. So, she had it.
You know what? I'm not a part of the panel, but I'm going to say this. Just fighting for justice is not about going on a podium somewhere and preaching or even protesting or none of that. Justice is also about how you treat your fellow man. So they might not know who, asked for Peter Tosh. Maybe all of Jamaica wanted Peter Tosh. Yes, I understand what you're talking about, but no. I understand what you're saying, but justice comes in many forms. So it's not only about somebody passing a law or something like that. That means that it's justice. There are people preaching on a pulpit every Sunday about treating their fellow man, and they don't do it. But to my question now, I was at the function last night, and this is for you, Nyambi. I was at the function last night, and I saw that... Okay, I have the floor now. Thank you. I was at the function last night, and I saw a poster outside the venue with Peter Tosh and Mick Jagger. Now, I'm not an expert on Peter Tosh, but from what I've read, they had a falling out. And so if you're managing his image and his brand and all of that, who is the person that is going to overlook? Because I know you say he died when you were a young child. So of course you're not going to know every single detail as far as his relationships with this person and that person and who he was mad at and whatever and had beef with or whatever. But I know from what I've read that he and Mick Jagger fell out. And then I'm seeing last night this big poster. I mean, I took a picture in front of it, but when I left, I thought about it and I'm like, who is going to be responsible to make sure that, the people that it would be the way he wanted, in more or less is what I'm asking.
Okay, thanks. All right, Copeland, I'm going to have you come in a second.
One thing that the family realizes is that there's a lot of controversial history when it comes to my father. And so although they may have had a falling out, they are a part of history. So we are working on developing like an advisory board here in Jamaica. So people because, the family is very young and we don't necessarily know a lot about the business relationships that my father had, as you said. And so we look to develop a board that we can talk to people like Herbie Miller and Copeland Forbes that know a lot about the stories and the controversial issues that has happened. So those are just today, those are the individuals that we would probably be consulting with.
And on that note, Copeland Forbes is right here, so he can give direct input on that.
Yeah, sorry for the lateness, but I was driving around this complex. Couldn't find this place. Because I am so accustomed to the other place, you know what I mean? But I stepped in and I heard a very important question. And that question was asked by a few people before the concert when they drove by the place and they saw the picture of Mick Jagger. Somebody said to me, is Mick Jagger coming? You know, even that. But first I should introduce myself. My name is Copeland Forbes, and I was one of Peter's manager up to the end of his career after Herbie Miller, okay? On that question that you just asked, I can tell you everything about that. I was right there, right? I wouldn't say Mick and Peter had no great fallout. There was a misunderstanding. Peter wanted to get out of Rolling Stones. Now, Rolling Stones record is run by the president, which was Earl McGrath. Okay? Mick owns the company, but him don't run the company. Right? Him own the company, but him don't run the company. So what happened is that Peter wanted to get out because we had a great deal with CBS and EMI was making an offer. But the contract did not end yet, so he wanted to get out of it. So he was kind of upset, you know what I mean? And I remember one time he did an interview on NBC, and he made a statement that his publicist, Charlie Comer, came to us at the hotel and was kicking hell, you know, because Peter said something like, when him done with him, God cry, something like that. Well, you know his usual expression. Then I heard that Mick was walking at 2 security, that if Peter is seen within 10 feet of him, right, to get rid of him. So when I heard about that now, I marshaled the whole situation. So we're trying to get out of the contract so he can move on. And then one day I was in New York over at Danny Sims' house, and I got a call from Chris Kimsey, who was the producer of the Mama Africa album, who works with the Rolling Stones too. Then he called me and said he's in town. So what you doing here? They said they're doing some work with Mick Jagger over at Hit Factory. So I said, okay, I'm coming down tonight. He said, okay, I didn't tell him anything else. So I called Peter over in my apartment, and I said, Peter, Mick in town, you know. He said, yeah, man, I could go over there tonight. He said, yeah, man, how you mean? I said, all right. I started to fret because I don't know what kind of mood Peter was in. So anyway, the studio time didn't start until 12 o'clock. Peter lived right next door to where John Lennon was living on Central Park West. Hit Factory is right off 8th Avenue, if you know New York. So I called Dennis Stamps, now an engineer, and I said, come and pick me up. And then I shoot over to Peter's apartment, pick him up, and then we head down to Hit Factory. All I'm driving down to Hit Factory, they don't know I'm coming with Peter. Peter, Mick's supposed to have 2 security guards, which if Peter is seen within 10 feet of him, must get rid of him. You know, so I start to wonder in my head, how am I going to play out this now? Anyway, I just moved with a positive vibe. Peter's cousin was there to call tea. And then when we got to Hit Factory Park, and I just go upstairs, ring the buzzer, who is it? Copeland. Broop, the door open. As Peter walking with me, I still didn't know what going through my head. We went up into the studio. We went in the studio. Mick was in the studio. But Mick was behind the glass, voicing a song. And if you know, sometime out the studio stage, one door get in, the mixing board is there, a chair is there, and the studio door to get into voice, the studio was over there. So me and Peter came in, we sat at a chair there. Mick was in the studio voicing, and when he looked through the glass, him said, Peter, no security guard is there. So him stop voice the song. Him stop voice the song, and we sit down, say hello to Chris, everybody, and we sit down, and Peter Arad in the mizan, and we sit down there, and I don't know what is going to happen now. And then Mick stop. So the engineer stopped the tape. We sit there, 5 minutes pass, quiet. 10 minutes pass, quiet. Then I said, Mick come through the door. And came right out, and as I reach about there, him say, Peter, speak with an English accent, and never forget it. Peter, I heard you looking for me to kill me. If you're going to kill me now. And he take off his shirt, close his eyes, and lie down on Peter's foot right there, sir. All of this in my book, you know. First time I talk about it. And Peter had a rod in his hand. And Peter said, oh man, get up man. We are chat about. You're a businessman, me a businessman. You're a musician, me a musician. But it's pure, what it a go on, and I want to come out of the company. Mick didn't know what the hell he was talking about. So things was getting a little uneasy. So what I did, I said to Dennis Thompson, I said, Dennis, make we come out and leave them together, because sometimes the two of them have a way can work out them things. Somebody said, Bam, no, Mr. the engineer slide out already, Chris Kimsey, and go and play pool. So me slide out too, then he slide out and me leave Peter and Mick inside there talking. So while we're out there, me hear music. After 10-15 minutes, me hear music I play, and Peter have a wah-wah sound. If you listen to his music, a wah-wah sound. So I hear the wah-wah sound going over this rhythm. And I said, but hold on, that sound like a Peter style of playing. So I'm going to the studio and so I'm peep. When I peep, I say Peter in the studio with Mick. Peter overdub some guitar upon Mick song. And I say Mick with a big spliff in my mouth. So I said, wait, somebody said, Bam, and take up the phone and call Charlie Coma, which was his publicist. And I said, Charlie. So we're at It Factory, you know. So yeah, Mick is here. Peter is here. He said, Jesus Christ, Lord have mercy. Are they fighting? I said, no, they're not fighting. You know, he said, what is happening? I said, they have the most peaceful conversation or whatever. So him call a photographer at the New York Post, him call a journalist at the New York Times and send them over to It Factory immediately. So he came over there, and when they looked, Peter and Mick was talking, discussing things, going through the most amicable stuff I've ever seen, like buddies that I know them used to be. And when I saw that now, the photographers came in and they took some picture. I have the headline right now that it said Peter and Mick hit it off at It Factory, which came out the headline the next day in the New York Times, the New York Post. And then Mick said to me, Copeland, meet me over at the office on Monday, which was in Rockefeller Center, Rolling Stones Records. Right? Beat him over there at 5 o'clock because he didn't know what was happening. When he heard all these things that Peter was talking about, he didn't know anything because he owned the company, but him don't run it. It's Earl McGrath run it. And then when we went through everything and so on, you know what he did? I'll never forget it. He took out his checkbook and him draw a check for $60,000. $60,000 US dollars in 1983. A lot of money. And him said to me, Copeland, give this to Peter. This is from me to him, because I feel bad to know that he wanted to get out of the company and he couldn't get out, and I didn't know anything about it. And this has nothing to do with the record company. This is just from me to him. And he made out a check to Intel Diplo for $60,000. And I walk with it from Rockefeller Center and go straight over to Bert Padel office, his accountant, and hand it to the accountant. The accountant didn't know what was this for. I said, Mick Jagger, give it to me to put in a Peter account for compensation, because I felt bad that Peter wanted his release and couldn't get his release. So it wasn't that they ended up on a bitter note. You see, they ended up in an amicable way, but it was just a misunderstanding somewhere in the middle where Mick didn't know what was happening, and we got a good offer from EMI and from CBS, and he wanted to move on with it, but the fact that the contract wasn't actually solidified and ended properly, that was where the hold up is. So Peter and Mick is still good friends. You know, I mean, yeah. Peter and Mick is still good friends. There's no animosity there. There's nothing, you know, between them. So seeing the picture there, you know, the only thing people would probably wonder is if Mick was coming to perform, you know. But because Mick was the one who came to Jamaica in 1978, you know, when he was doing the peace concert, and watched the performance, and he got interested in Peter. And he was the one that made the gesture to sign Peter to his label. He was the one who invited Peter to tour with him. And we toured with him in the 70s, opening for the Rolling Stones, playing to audience in excess of 300,000, which was one of the greatest exposure any reggae artist could have gotten at that time. And even when Peter was doing his solo concerts, if Mick, even at 50 miles away, him jump on a private plane and fly to the venue to come and do that one song with Peter, because he loved Peter so much, and Peter meant a whole lot to him, you know, and they were always good friends, and there was never no real animosity that people could think that, you know, what his picture was doing beside Peter, because if you see the video that they did, we did that over, was it NBC, I think it was, together, and it was one hell of a recording session that night, you know what I mean? So just to correct that part, there was no animosity between Peter and Mick, you know, just a little misunderstanding. So when I walked in a while ago and I heard it, I had to jump in there because I actually was there and played a part in it, bringing them together. That the headline came out in the New York Post, New York Times, said, Peter and Mick hit it off at the Hit Factory. So that's how that part was, okay?
Yes, thank you, Copeland. We have time for just 2 more questions. Who haven't asked questions before, I'm going to, you know, basically prioritize them. I see several hands at the back. A brother here, all right, if you could come forward, please. Who else has their hand raised? But I'm going to take those who haven't asked before first.
Good night, everyone. And to Peter's family, whole heap of love. And it's good to see all of you together, making the thing happen, you know? Yeah, what I would like to say, with justice, what Peter said about justice was the foundation was about love, right? Because without love, we can't have no justice. Without justice, we can't have no peace, right? So we have to go back to the foundation, which is love, right? And to Mr. Barnett here, it's a joy to see you doing something like this. But take it out to the people, though. Because Peter was all about the people, you know. And when you do it up here by you exclude a whole heap of people. Right? Trenchtown, go back at the base. You know, go back at the base and this can be like a thing where it can build the foundation where it can basically work into a concert thing. Right? So my advice, my brother, go back down to Trenchtown. Next year, Trenchtown.
All right. Thanks for that. Brother Medin, wait, no, you didn't have the question. This brother here, if you could just come meet me halfway, no? Everybody way at the back wants to ask question.
Yes. Just want to say, give thanks to Tosh's children for speaking. You're not children anymore, though. In your opinion, why do you think that contemporary artists are less vocal and less active socially, being children of a very socially active person?
Okay, and that question is to, yeah, but you asked the question already, my brother. Yeah. Who wants to answer that one? I see a whole lot of picture ups here. You can, all right.
I think it's kind of the issue that we face across the world. A lot of music is promoted that doesn't educate the people. So it's going to take a lot of work to really start promoting music that educates the massive, because you realize it's something that the people don't really want to see happen, because music is such a powerful, powerful, powerful tool. Yeah. Right. I think there's a lot of individuals that are activists, but you're not going to hear about those people because it's not beneficial to the mass. Same reason, almost the same reason. The contemporary artists, I think a lot of contemporary artists just realize, I think they realize that for them it's a very difficult battle. You may have one and two that say a couple of words that are meaningful and powerful, but to really step on that platform and be an icon for the young children is sometimes a dangerous thing to do. And so I think it's just going to be a lot of time and education that has to happen before they realize their true power.
Thank you, Niambe. Yes. One, yeah.
Peter, where's Peter Simon? Okay, I don't know, most of you know, this is Peter Simon. He's one of Peter's dearest friend who followed us around, the brother of Carly Simon, you know, and they are the ones who run the business company of Simon and Schuster, where my book will be published. Peter just asked me a very important question, and I think this is very important because, and I don't know who's going to find the answer, so one of the kids better have the answer. Peter said to ask the people here that if Peter Tosh was alive today and he was presented and awarded this Order of Merit, what would his reaction be? What will his response be? And how would he feel about that particular award? And this is a question that Peter Simon just asked, one of Peter's dear friends. So I don't know if one of the kids would like to answer that.
I think Herbie Miller had already addressed that before you got here. Yeah.
All right, you asked that. But basically, let me see a couple more hands, and cause we're going to go in towards wrap up. And while before I forget, just a very fitting tribute. We did have this scheduled earlier in the program, but actually impromptu, I want people to be introduced to Informative History Man. Very powerful tribute song to Peter Tosh. Actually, just do it now, History Man. Let's go and do it for the crowd now so they can get a taste. And I know we can do it a cappella.
Yeah, give thanks. Yes, Copeland. You know, this is one of the world chronologists, archaeologists, anthropologists, the informative instrument of a musicologist. I'm not a philanthropist, but what I did is out of pure philanthropy. Yeah, man, a Peter thing. Listen up. Peter Tosh, Daddy Peter Tosh, the man say legalize the herb, the chalice and feel light up. Peter Tosh, Daddy Peter, no Babylon, no like the man, so them beat him up enough. Peter Tosh was born in a 1944, October 19. Oh yes, this is sure. Real revolutionary true Rastaman, born in a Green Hill down a Westmoreland. Big up Peter, mother name Miss Alvira. A one son she have no must remember. James McIntosh, that was Peter's father. He was a Christian, used to be a preacher. So as a little youth, him rest up in the country. At the age of 15, moved to Kingston City. Him used to rest up monks one name auntie. Then time the him no link up yet with the Bamboni. Peter Tosh used to live in a Trenchtown area. Practice him guitar, him was a guitar player. Jamaican people no hear that one here. Peter Tosh used to be an apprentice tailor. Peter Tosh, Daddy Peter Tosh, the man say legalize the herb, the chalice and feel light up. Peter Tosh, Daddy Peter, no Babylon no like them and so them beat him up. 1962 link up with Bob Bamboni, and so the three of them start to part together. After that them link up with Joe Hicks the teacher, Cherry Green, Beverly, Kelso and Broadway together. 1963 them put the group together. How what them call them? The wailing wailer. Peter Tosh was the only instrument player, a self-taught guitarist and a keyboard player. 1964 them get them first major hit. Simadong was the name and the title of it. 1974 when the group gets split, Peter first whole album name Legalize It. Get up, stand up, a Peter Tosh write it. Stop that train, a Peter Tosh write it. 400 years a Peter Tosh write it. No sympathy, a Peter Tosh write it. Peter Tosh, Daddy Peter, no Babylon no like them and so them beat him up enough. Peter Tosh, Daddy Peter, no Babylon no like them and so them beat him up. A lot of single and plenty LP. 1976 a legalized LP. 1977 equal rights LP. 1978 a Bush Doctor LP. 1979 a Mystic Man LP. Wanted General Life a 81 LP. Mama Africa done 1983. 1988 Peter won the Grammy. Peter Tosh have a band name Word, Sound and Power. At the time them used to call him step in razor. When him used to live up in a St. Andrew area, and him used to be a one-wheel cycle rider. 1983, just listen to me statement. Peter Tosh car meet in a one big accident. Who the on the mic, not the great history man. In a the accident, him lost him girlfriend named Ivan. Peter Tosh, Daddy Peter. The man say legalize it, bitch, a list of feel light up. Peter Tosh, Daddy Peter. No Babylon, no like them answer them. Listen again. Shh. Big up Peter Tosh, him a real superstar. Him last album it name no Nuclear War. 11th of September 1987. Them kill Peter Tosh, I me no know the reason. How one gunshot him get in him head. Doc Brown and Freya him next two friend dead. A 4-gun man, listen to me history. Lepo, yo Skiba and Mikey. Santa get a few shot, but him never dead. Mike's get a few shot, but him never dead. Marlene get a one shot, but she never dead. Enough gunshot like a big shootout. Mama Joy get a shot in her foot and her mouth. Jah bless them soul because them never drop out. Big up Peter, sons and daughters all about. History man upon the mic and me a sing it out. Big up Cobland Fab and Herbie Miller. The two used to be Peter Tosh manager. 2012 for no must remember. Receive the order of merit from Sister Portia. Peter Tosh, Daddy Peter. The man say legalize the chalice. Alright. Jah know me mother than them, me hotter than them, me wicked and alright. Good me no bad, me no sick, me no sad, me no eat them cow, them goat, them hog. Moses part the sea with a rod. Fear on them army, the whole of them sad. Children of Israel, the whole of them God. Sons and daughters, mothers and dad. Israel king is Israel God. From you know that you must happy and glad. Light up before you make a bun down room. Tell the Babylon some ready for go home. Rastafari, my head no fi comb. I listen I say, sit down pon the tune. Me no eat them meat, me no suck them bone. Pies my body like in a grammar zone. Quack and cocaine, if you leave it alone. Mash up your heart, make you vomit and foam way mother than them. We at it up.
Yeah, history man, talented artist, and I think that is a fitting way for seal up this Peter Tosh Symposium for 2012. The family are here, Copeland is here, and everybody is here, you know. Oh, me just see Sister Marlene. She's there, so, you know, give thanks. Refreshments on the outside. Give thanks.